the majority of them are probably here in Guatemala. There's a very small worm that likes to eat roots of the coffee plants. They live in the soil. Okay, so they like to eat the roots of the coffee plants. So when coffee was first brought to Guatemala in 1860, we first discovered that, well, why are all the coffee plants dying off? Why are they getting sick and everything? So we found out, we took them out of the ground, examined them, and we found out it's because the roots were all messed up and they were eaten away. So that's why they were dying off and everything. So what we did is the way we took care of that problem was by using the grafting system. Okay, and there was some genius that figured it out. I don't know how he knew, but he actually took the stronger root system of the robust, because the robust coffee plant is actually it's like a tree, like a coffee plant. It's like a tree. Okay, and then the Arabica coffee plant obviously is kind of like a bush if you look back here. Okay, so on the robust coffee plant, it has a large root system. Okay, so it will withstand those nematodes. So what this genius figured out was he could use the stronger root system from the robust and use it for a high quality coffee plant. So he could make the high quality coffee plant, the Arabica, a strong coffee plant in a root system. So what he did was the grafting system. Okay, so how it works is we'll actually have 3 ladies in this whole coffee plantation that do all of the grafting. And what they do is they'll actually put a robust coffee plant in the ground and Arabica coffee plant in the ground. They'll let them grow for about 3 months, sometimes 4 months. And then once that 4 months is passed, they'll actually very delicately take them out of the ground, roots and everything, okay? And with a very fine, like, shaving blade, they'll cut the top part off the robust, because they're not using the top part, just using the top part of the Arabica, the quality part, okay? And then on the Arabica, they cut the roots off, because we're not using the roots of the Arabica. And then, with that same fine blade, they will actually cut down the center of the stem of the robust, so the center is exposed. And on the Arabica, shave off the sides, so the center is exposed also. And then very delicately put them together and wrap them in paraffin wax. Is anybody familiar with paraffin wax? It's kind of like it's a tape made for plants, especially for grafting
like
plants. Yeah, kind of, right. It's not as dense as a regular tape. Okay, so that is the grafting process. And then after they've done that, they put them in these little plastic bags like you see here, so they can be adapted in a more dense area. Because obviously when they get bigger, like all these back here, they're going to have to be separated a lot more. But with all the ones that have already been grafted, when they're at a young age, we can put them closer together and conserve space. Okay, so I have a question for you guys. How many do you think one lady can do? How many plants, one by one, do you think one lady can do in 20 minutes?
50.
100.
500.
500?
No.
Yeah.
20 minutes.
Fast.
In how long? In how long?
20
In
minutes.
20 minutes. How many plants, one by one?
I'll say 100.
I
And that's
would
the
say-
process, that whole process that you just talked about?
Yeah, everything I just explained to you.
Okay, 300.
I
300.
say 75.
75? That's a little bit more accurate.
500.
Actually, the record is 84. Okay, 84 coffee plants. You guys were really
Yeah.
That was close.
Hey, they Guatemalans, man. What do you
I was
expect?
optimistic.
Yeah. What do you expect? So, yes, yeah. And actually, when I say record, we actually do have a competition here at the coffee plantation where other ladies from other coffee farms and coffee plantations will come and they'll compete. So you can do the most coffee plants in 20 minutes. But normally they keep it down to about 40
see
plants,
that.
30 to 40 plants every 20 minutes, just because it's another quality factor. And here at this coffee farm, you'll see there's so many steps in making of our coffee that we try to get the highest quality we possibly can, just in order of competition. Okay, because for instance, Brazil is the highest coffee production in the whole world. They have over 1 million coffee producers in the whole world. So in order of competition, a lot of people are just going to buy from them because it's so cheap. All they have to do is just plant it in the ground and they have coffee for another 80 years. Us, we have to go through the labor of doing all the hand picking, we have to go through the labor of the grafting, we have to go through the labor of planting all these trees out here for shade and all that kind of stuff, which I'll explain to you that in a minute. But so in order of competition, a lot of people are just going to buy from Brazil because it's so cheap. So here we have to make it up for it by using a higher quality coffee, if that makes sense. Okay. So next step after the grafting process, obviously you can see all these plants out here have been grafted. All right. So after they've been grafted, they're brought out here into what we call the nursery, where they have special attention. Okay. So as you can see, there's a lot of shade trees out here and stuff. Most of these trees out here, the reason we have shade trees is because another factor of this Arabica coffee plant, another thing, the reason it's delicate is because it needs shade. And a lot of plants, like in a garden in the United States or something like that, or anywhere, you put a plant in the ground or something like that, it needs a lot of sun. It needs exposure to sun. If it has too much shade, it's not going to survive. But the coffee plants is a little bit different. They need shade in order to survive. They can't take too much sun or they're going to dry out. which actually I'll show you in a different part of the plantation, some spots where they don't have enough shade, where they have just dried out and died. Okay, so that's why we have a lot of shade trees out here. So as you can see, the most common tree we have out here is the grevillea tree. This one we actually transplanted from Australia. Now the reason we brought it all the way from Australia is because there are 4 benefits to it. First of all, obviously it provides shade. Second of all, you guys are probably wondering what all that wood was out on the road. It's actually because we can actually harvest the wood from these trees and not hurt them. Let's see, this tree right here, you can see there are a couple spots where the limbs have been cut off, like right there towards the bottom. Limbs have been cut off. What we can do is we can cut the limbs off, and those limbs will actually grow right back. And you can tell that the original limbs just kind of spur out kind of like this. The ones that have been cut off and the new ones just go straight up. Like you can see some of them back there. So a lot of the limbs just go straight up from the branch. Kind of looks unnatural a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, that's the reason. We can cut the limbs off and they'll grow right back. Okay, so we're able to harvest the firewood out of it. Okay, so the third benefit out of these grevillea trees is here in Guatemala, a lot of you probably know there's a rainy season and a dry season. Okay, in the rainy season, these grevillea trees, it's pretty amazing what they do. In the rainy season, they'll actually collect a lot of that moisture from all the rain, and then in the dry season, they'll put out some of the rain, a lot of that moisture. Okay, so we call these trees the giver because they don't take much and they give a lot. For instance, they don't take much, they don't produce an edible fruit. So they're not taking very much nutrients in the soil. All the nutrients can go to the coffee plants. So we can have a nice shade tree, yet still have enough nutrients in the soil for the coffee plants. Those are the 4 benefits to this grevillea
And wood
tree.
for the tortillas.
What's that?
And wood for the tortillas.
Yeah. Actually, a lot of the workers that work out in the plantations here, like you can see, there are quite a few people out here. And when they cook their tortillas or cook their lunch, they use that wood to cook their lunch. Okay. So does anybody have any questions so far? No?
Too early.
Huh?
We're still in the early stages.
Yes. Yeah. So after the grafting process, we bring them out here in these plastic bags and everything. So the reason we have them in the plastic bags, like I said before, is to conserve space. Instead of just straight up planting them in the ground, actually you can see a lot of them we already have planted up in the ground. We can still conserve a lot of space by putting them in the plastic bags.
How long do you keep them here before you move?
We actually will keep them there until they're too big in order to keep them in the plastic bag, which is about 2 years old. Most of these out here are about 1 year old to 14 months old probably. Now, the coffee plants don't actually start to produce coffee until they're about 4 or 5 years old, which are these right here. Like this one over here is going to be like 3 years old, and you can see there's one right here. You can see there's 2 coffee berries. See that? Okay, this is only 3 years old, so this is very early. On 4 years old, you can see it starts coming out a little bit more on a couple of the branches. See that? On 5 years old, which would probably be like this one over here, one of these, it starts having a lot of coffee berries. See that? So that is the age of the coffee plants when they actually start to produce. So I don't know if you guys have seen the logo or anything, but remember I said the coffee actually came to Guatemala in 1860. This coffee farm didn't start to sell coffee in 1870. The reason for that is because we didn't start selling coffee or start planting coffee until 1865. So coffee came to Guatemala in 1860. We started planting in 1865, started selling in 1870. Because 1870 we were able to start selling. That makes sense? So after they start producing, we'll bring them out into their own part of the plantation and everything. And like all these back here, you can see these are going to be anywhere from 15 to 20 years old. Let's see, this is probably a good one right here. This one is about 15, this might be closer to 18 years old. And the way I can tell is, you can see, so you can see, the way I can tell is because normally the height, this is a pretty decent height according to age. And then the other thing is, you can tell by the notches in the branches. See how there's a notch there, notch there, notch there, notch there, notch there. So you can see there, and I'm gonna say about every 4 notches is gonna be 1 year. So that's pretty close to 15 years old. All right. And then every notch, actually, normally every notch will produce a series of coffee beans. Like you can see here, a notch has a little bit, a notch has a little bit, a notch has a little bit, and that's also where the leaves come out. Okay. So that's how it works. And here in Guatemala, the harvest season is later November, like mid-November, late November through March. So we have about 4.5 months of harvest season. Okay. So during those 4.5 months, what we're doing is we'll actually hire 400 extra workers from other towns and other coffee farms at times to come work here for those 3.5 months or 4.5 months. And what they do is they'll actually do all hand picking.